The Republican primary debate was exactly as unhinged as you could have imagined, with candidates racing to the bottom amid climate denialism and lies about abortion and fear-mongering about the border and, of course, some blatant transphobia. Here are the most standout moments of the night.
Let us be honest as Republicans. I'm the only person on the stage who isn't bought and paid for, so I can say this. The climate change agenda is a hoax. The climate change agenda is a hoax, and we have to declare independence for it. And the reality is, the anti-carbon agenda is the wet blanket on our economy. And so the reality is, more people are dying of bad climate change policies than they are of actual climate change.
Vivek Ramaswamy's suggestion that the climate change agenda is a hoax. First of all, because apparently Republican candidates don't have the spine to acknowledge objective reality, even as wildfires ravage the West, and hurricanes ravage the Southeast, and droughts ravage the Midwest, climate change is real, and it will only continue to worsen if the Republican strategy of burying our heads in the sand is adopted. The Democratic climate change agenda is the only thing offering even a glimmer of hope that we'll have a habitable planet in the future. The Inflation Reduction Act, passed exclusively with Democratic votes, is the biggest investment in climate in the history of this country. It will be the most consequential piece of legislation as far as saving our planet goes until the Democrats do it again. And in the face of Phoenix reaching 110-degree temperatures for 30 days in a row, and Maui's drought setting the stage for a devastating wildfire, and Southern California experiencing a tropical storm for the first time in nearly a century, Democratic leadership on climate in the face of an absent Republican Party has never been more important.
But we are going to take a brief moment and talk about the elephant not in the room.
Former President Trump has been indicted in 4 different states on 91 counts. He will be processed tomorrow in Georgia at the Fulton County Jail for charges relating to the 2020 election loss.
You all signed a pledge to support the eventual Republican nominee. If former President Trump is convicted in a court of law, would you still support him as your party's choice? Please raise your hand if you would. Just hold on.
Hardly a spine in sight. I want to focus specifically on Ron DeSantis here. You'll notice that he wouldn't even dare raise his hand until he felt enough other people raise their hands that he had adequate cover. This guy's campaign is so steeped in fear over the prospect of angering Donald Trump and his base that he's turned into this cowering infant as soon as Trump is invoked. It was a phenomenon so apparent that even moderator Bret Baier called him out for it.
Former President Trump is beating you by 30, 40 points in many polls. So it is a factor in the GOP primary. Governor Hutchinson.
When even the Fox News hosts start calling you out for your unwillingness to confront objective reality, things are probably not going so well.
We cannot let states like California, New York, and Illinois have abortions on demand up until the day of birth. That is immoral, it is unethical, it is wrong. We must have a president of the United States who will advocate and fight for, at the minimum, a 15-week limit. I am 100% pro-life conservative. I have a 100% pro-life record. I got to tell you, though, we must fight for life. Our Declaration of Independence says our Creator gave us inalienable rights that include life. That is a list. That is an issue we must solve. We can't leave it to Illinois. We can't leave it to Minnesota. We can't leave it to Illinois. We must solve that issue with a 15-week limit at a minimum.
Brett, I think we're all pro-life, but what I would love is for someone to ask Biden and Kamala Harris, are they for 38 weeks? Are they for 39 weeks? Are they for 40 weeks? Because that's what the media needs to be asking.
All right.
This was a common refrain throughout the night, that Democrats are advocating for abortion on demand. Why? Because it sounds scary, and at the end of the day, nothing is more effective among the Republican base than fear-mongering. But here are the facts. According to the CDC, almost 99% of abortions occur before 21 weeks. Republicans love to frame this as liberals just nonchalantly aborting babies on the day of their delivery as easily as we choose our Starbucks lattes, but that's not what's happening in reality. Again, virtually all abortions are happening before 21 weeks. weeks. And so think about why those last 1% of women are getting abortions after 21 weeks. The reasons range from the women not knowing they were pregnant, to fetal anomalies, to health risks to the mother. And so banning abortions after some arbitrary date isn't going to stop the kinds of hysterical reasons that Republicans fearmonger about, like infanticide, because infanticide isn't actually happening. That is a figment of Republicans' imagination. And all it's going to do is impact the 1% of women who are already dealing with some major trauma. Again, 99% of abortions are happening early anyway. The only post-21-week abortions are the result of some major complication. That's what's being impacted. That's who Republicans would be making life more difficult for. The women who are suffering due to some unforeseen issue or complication. Republicans would be targeting the very women who are already dealing with immeasurable pain. They would be finding the single most vulnerable, desperate, heartbroken women there are and imposing an unnecessary burden onto them for solely political reasons. And let's be clear, they know that, but they're saying whatever they need to say to pander to the base to win an election. Because it's not about helping others, it is about helping themselves.
A win for Russia is a win for China. We have to know that. Ukraine is the first line of defense for us. And the problem that Vivek doesn't understand is he wants to hand Ukraine to Russia. He wants to let China eat Taiwan. He wants to go and stop funding Israel. You don't do that to friends. What you do instead is you have the backs of your friends. Ukraine is the front line of defense. Putin has said, once Russia takes Ukraine, Poland and the Baltics are next. That's a world war. We're trying to prevent war. Look at what Putin did today. He killed Prigozhin. When I was at the UN, the Russian ambassador suddenly died. This guy is a murderer, and you are choosing a murderer over a pro-American country.
First of all, Mr. Ramaswamy, you have 30 seconds. Mr. DeSantis,
Nikki, I wish you well in your future career on the boards of Lockheed and Raytheon.
I'm not on the boards of Lockheed and Raytheon. And
Boeing came off of it, but you've been pushing this lie. You've been pushing this lie all week, Nikki.
You want to go and defund Israel? You want to
Okay, let me address that. I'm glad you brought that up. I'm going to address each of those right now. This is the false lies of a professional politician. There you have it.
Your watch, so the reality is, America less safe. You have no foreign policy experience, and it shows.
And you know what? The foreign policy experience that you all have shows in the pointless wars we've gotten into.
Now, up until this moment, Vivek had been leading the debate by espousing support for every hot-button issue, seemingly for the sake of espousing support for every hot-button issue. And in a Republican primary completely enveloped by Trumpism, Vivek seemed to have figured out that all he needed to do was to stand out as the chaos candidate for the sake of being the chaos candidate. But when the moment came where he was the only one on stage to suggest hanging Ukraine out to dry, that's where Nikki Haley and the crowd seemed to turn on him. Not only because abandoning an American ally in deference to a Russian dictatorship is insane, but also because it betrayed Vivek for what he really is. Yet another amateur provocateur leaning on shock and chaos in place of any actual experience or qualifications. Which is not to say that these people won't all eventually fall in line to defend Donald Trump, and that the audience who cheered on Nikki Haley won't do the same, but the strategy was so obvious by Vivek that I imagine it was damn near impossible for everyone in that room not to feel like they were being exploited. And in a party that essentially survives off of exploitation, that is really saying something. But the takeaway from this debate is really quite simple. With or without Donald Trump, this is a party that has no guiding principles aside from the majority of its adherents professing blind fealty to Donald Trump. There's no commitment to the law, to the Constitution, or to the truth. It's little more than fear porn and slavish devotion to the guy who they themselves are helping beat them. But it did serve one useful purpose. It showed the rest of the country just how unserious this party is. Because while we have Democrats adding record jobs and lowering inflation and presiding over a world-best economy, you've got Republicans performing this circus act on stage for the entire world to see. If that's the message they were trying to send, then they succeeded. But that was the only success of the night. Before you go, I need some help. Please subscribe to the channel and do your part to help grow the progressive media ecosystem. I don't do sponsorships or paid ads, I won't ask for money, but just subscribing to this channel goes a really long way, and it helps get the message out to more people. The subscribe button is right here on the screen. You can also subscribe to my Spanish language channel, which I made to reach those crucial Spanish-speaking voters. That link is on the screen too. And finally, if you want to listen to my audio podcast, you can follow that link as well. Thanks so much for watching.